here. So is it something that happens every time we do a comp plan update? Does that change the calculation a little bit?
I think council could do that, obviously, but what I was getting at is that when you use the zoning ideas, the zoning ideas have a method by which you can get a variance. Okay, so I would like to change from community center to gateway corridor because we meet all these criteria.
Because this is an unforeseen consequence that no one saw coming, so we should absolutely
Appeals
board
process,
appeals will have to deal with it.
But I like the idea that we're gonna vote, and I don't know if council agrees with me on this, I'd like to vote on a map, and that's what we have put in time, not vote on criteria where the map could be moving. I'd like once it's done, we vote, like y'all draw a map, we vote on it, and then if we find things that aren't working, then a few.
Want to live there, number two, you gotta have a process to at least give people the opportunity to pitch it.
That's right.
And that would be overseen by planning commission?
It's a board of zoning appeals.
Board of zoning appeals.
They don't have a huge amount.
A stack of words, we're just not gonna fill them. And then if you do fill them, you're just gonna lose the people.
What things you would like us to consider on this list?
And proposed or being, applications have been submitted.
Because we have no density that allows for them right now, right?
But, we don't have these yet.
Okay, so we need, if we're gonna have our other townhouse in the county, we have to write something. All right, so where, sorry, the original question, where can they go under this new plan?
So that's up to y'all.
Okay.
Again, same thing here, we can either set specific standards for all townhome developments countywide, or we can set specific standards per area.
So in other words, let me, excuse me, and let me, so you're saying, like, for the tiny home or townhomes, if we do it countywide, that means a tiny home development can be anywhere in the county based on 5 acres or whatever that is. The other way to look at it is going, no, tiny homes can only go in 4, 5, and 6, or 1, 2, and 3, or whatever. Same thing with townhouses.
And they have to meet the same density requirements.
Right, so you could prohibit that from being built in certain zones, so to speak.
Yeah, the original thought
That's
from a staff perspective would be for
experience.
those to go around municipalities.
Yeah.
Not in the
So,
urban area.
but that's where you would ask, if you see a road.
If something happened and you go, oh, but this is that one-off, and you'd ask for a variance. I mean, I get that. But in general, we're saying, we don't want tiny home developments to be in number 5. So no tiny homes in number 5. But it can fall into 3, 2, and 1. Same thing with, or whatever, with tiny houses. We could think of it that way.
Right.
I wouldn't say no tiny homes, I would say no tiny home
Developments.
Right, you can still put a tiny home in 2 acres.
I mean, yeah,
Just to clarify, not the singles.
I want to go build a tiny home.
Probably good, but I think that's something we're learning here tonight. I'm just me listening to this conversation. We got to be very careful that we don't have people believing. We're telling them what they can do with their property on the back.
Right, we're talking about more than 10 houses.
No.
Could you put up the multipliers that you had for each category?
The matrix.
You're gonna send us all this.
Yes.
I have a question while he's taking notes. I don't know how this handles this, but I'm very curious because we're being very prescriptive here. We had a person come in and said, hey, they just put a drug treatment facility right in the middle of our neighborhood. I've owned the house for 30 years, and now my next door neighbor's 15 crackheads on the front porch. I mean, because that's what they're experiencing, and it's made the neighborhood a lot louder, a lot more hectic, a lot more people yelling at each other in the street for a little suburban neighborhood. My question is, how do we address something like that? Because we're talking about zones, but all of a sudden it's different if I have a home-based business and I'm working in the garage versus a corporate entity of some form, or some forms of church or something like that, and all of a sudden they've got a for-profit enterprise right in the middle of your neighborhood. Because I mean, it has changed the character of that community. That's that tiny neighborhood. Is there somewhere in this thing that we're going to do where we can address that? I mean, that they can only be in like 2 zones, or that you have to go to the variance group to be able to throw that into a neighborhood?
We certainly could. I would advise that the HOA is the one to handle.
There's no HOA for 2/3 of those old neighborhoods. They come into us, and remember, I mean, we were pretty impotent in our ability to help them out with that.
You talking about Alex Drive?
That was pretty expensive.
So you're saying if, like, we just go ahead and make these residential only?
We either make it residential only, or
which is being very cautious there. And then getting into what's general residential versus general commercial versus commercial two versus commercial one, like all of our municipalities have done. And I think that that will sideline any productive conversation or movement that we have going here. But this, in my opinion, lays the groundwork and foundation to empower on that front. While they can coexist, they don't have to coexist. So I think focusing on getting through this portion and then revisiting that portion would be the way I'd prefer to do it, but I can be convinced otherwise.
Next year's agenda coming.
If you voted on zones, I'm gonna use the Z word, if we now have 5 zones in the county, then you could start setting after that. If we voted on it and we now all agreed to these, then you could start adding what happens on this.
That's great, because group homes, group homes, things like that, I mean, there's a good reason to do them, et cetera, so I got you, all right, that's perfect. So we're doing this piece of this phase 1, phase 2 can be some of the more deep dive type things, I got you, okay, that's perfect. That's a great answer for these folks.
Okay, I have a
Question.
I don't know how to pose this question, so I'm gonna tell you the scenario. And then y'all, I think it's a state problem, but I think we gotta figure something out with this. I'm just gonna say exactly what it is. Liberty, guy owns 300 acres of land next to the airport, says, or 100 acres of land. I wanna build 300 houses. And I just want to clear cut it, and I want to put slab houses down, I want to put as many in there as I can. Based on our moratorium, can't do that. So, City of Liberty, annex me in. They have. We have no say-so in what's happened, and now he's going for a change from industrial zoning to residential zoning, which has a good chance of happening. But the impact that it's going to have on our residents on Highway 178 and all these, there'll be no impact fees collected. There's no infrastructure built. Liberty's just annexing them in.
If I only had someone with a statewide voice in that architecture.
I'm trying, I am. But my question is there something we can do as we're planning this out? I mean, it may wind up being what you want to do is let them sue us. Is it really trying to change the law on a, we can't supersede state law, I get that, but how can we have a say in what will impact county residents and what they have to pay for infrastructure and road, everything, when we have no choice?
I think, I can respond to just a second. I think you've got 2 issues there, okay? One of them is, the obvious one is, how do you deal with annexation, right? You got a piece of property, somebody wants to annex, the municipality wants to take them in. Right now, it's pretty, the county.
If somebody says, I want to be annexed, they go.
And the city council votes under their hand. All right, there's really nothing that the county can do about that. The second part of the problem is more interesting to me, is if you build 300 houses in a bowl with a county surrounding it and one little piece of land going to the city, how does the county regulate that, or can they regulate that?
That's my question.
Honestly, I don't know the answer. I don't know. I don't have a fix for you. But I certainly see the problem, and the result of that annexation cost the county a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
So how do we prevent that cost, or how do we recoup that cost, or how do we regulate that cost? That's
Yeah.
I think is a real question. Honestly, don't know the answer.
Is it something that we could put in this, maybe challenged in court?
I will
One way it's in there.
absolutely look.
One way that it's in there, I'm not talking about what he needs to do further research on, but there's a reason that the gateway standards are not the most stringent standards. Because then if they were, you'd just be making annexation happen left and right.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, the gateway standards are the lowest standards, the easiest to meet. And so people may be on that balance of, do I want to pay all those city taxes? Do I want to, have to sign up for city sewer? That balance is still out there for people to make, for developers to make. And so that's one of the reasons why you won't just say, like, okay, no, I want to lock down all the growth right outside of Liberty city limits as it is right now. I just want to lock it down. So jack it up and make everybody do 50% open space. But then they'll just annex. right? So it is kind of in the ordinance, the way we're proposing it, to keep from just shoving everybody into the annexation. But that's not to address the other issues he's got.
We're also gonna prevent people so right now, it's much cheaper for a developer to build in the county and then annex into the city. Their property value goes up after they've built, and they didn't have to pay the impact fee and they get all these benefits. Well, we're gonna have an impact fee now, and we're gonna have rules, so it's gonna be like, they're gonna be like, oh, well, county and city are kind of the same, and they might just stay in the
No,
county.
Liberty didn't have any impact fees.
So it sounds to me your beef is with the Liberty City Council. Like, to be honest, like, we can't go, like,
But
the
it's something
municipalities and
for-
counties are done separately.
They're not, I still don't know the only town councils that are doing things like that.
Yeah, I know, and like Clemson had a whole issue with who had the water rights to, and the annexation came down to who was collecting water utilities. You know, like I don't think we want to start telling municipalities what they can and can't do, but if we make our development, we're gonna start being more similar to the municipalities once we have some of these things passed, so they're not gonna have the incentive to take advantage of the county and then go into the city. Hopefully.
The way state level policy change, that gives us some voice, ideal, right, but that's a long haul. The other side of that is, city and county administrators meeting and having discussions and talking about, can you help me with this, can we work together on that? And, you know, I mean, let's be blunt, there's your road czar right there. Without intergovernmental agreements, there's a guy that has to go through our strategic list and help people with their roads and do things. And there's 25 other areas that at the county level he has influence, and they got to work together, right? So when you go and you have that voice, yeah, you know, we're all working together here. But if you do this, you're gonna hurt us, right? And you got to compensate for that in some way that comes down to a lot of cases going to be money.
Or the other way, to your point, Dr. Wilson, is, oh, we can annex like crazy and we gain absolutely not 1 square inch of road liability by doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the way we looked at it previously.
Right.
Now, me and the city administrators are talking about that issue. We don't see completely eye to eye. Some of the cities do more than others, but if you annex down that road, guess what? You know that up front. This is part of what you're deciding to do.
Yeah.
I think you have to be really, I remember when Half Acre came here, he was complaining about roads.
Yeah.
I said to him, part of the problem is you just keep annexing. That's what Liberty's doing, they're looking for the revenue. They're so poorly managed. The city of Liberty has called it over the years. They're looking at that. Now then they're gonna come to you for roads, they're gonna come to you for sewer. We should say no. You know, that was the point that I was making to him that night when he came here. I said, stop annexing, you won't have these problems. They see the revenue, but they don't see the associated costs, because that's not necessarily written down in the proposal,
Right.
you know? And, you know, Liberty is no better off now than it was 15 years ago. It's going for the revenue.
It's a double-edged sword, though. If you don't help, it's in the county's best interest for the city to be successful. Because if we take over all of their services and run everything for them, if they become unincorporated, it's an extraordinary amount of money for the county and for the residents of the entire county to have to burden. So it is in the county's best interest for the city to be successful. I'm just trying to figure out where is this, and yes, I'm gonna work on the state level. It's right here in this folder here I've got right here, that one of the policies that we're working on to try to push forward. Davey Hyde's on board. I mean, Representative Carter also said, I'm interested in county having standing in any annexation decision. This is a prime example of where the county has a stake in this, and we have no say-so.
Yeah.
So for my purposes, you know, the way that the developers and the folks in the city seem to think is the county doesn't lose anything, right? They're gaining revenue, and then whoever the constituent or the owner of the property gains some basic city services, you know, and they're going to pay a fee for that, where we don't really lose anything because we keep getting our piece of the tax base, right? The problem that I have is when there's, you know, like you just said, they're not taking the road, right? They're not pulling that into their, you know, there's a downstream cost of it. For my purposes, until we have the state level policy, you've got goodwill and brotherhood, right? Through the administrators and sort of a functional understanding of the impact it's having on both. And then at the end of the day, you have what he just said, right? You know, we don't want to go. I don't want to go back to what we had, where there was no, you know, everybody suing each other, TIF problems, all that. But at the end of the day, you know, the administrator's got a huge potential to the big stick. Right.
What I told them is that there's no ill intent on the city's part in this. If you follow the rule that got us to here, you can follow the rule. That's the rule that got us to here. The question is, you know, what's going to be our understanding now? And so I don't see any ill intent to my brothers and sisters in the administrative world here locally. But I do think we need to at least be talking about that. If you're going to annex down that road, you need to be thinking about the real cost of doing that. When that sign gets knocked down, when that shoulder deteriorates, you can't just say, hey, that's a county road. You know, at least in the conversations we're having now. And again, those are ongoing.
I do think Dr. Wilson brought a good point, and I talked to a city council member who didn't see it eye to eye with me at all. And I do think Liberty is a little unique because we provide a lot of time. It feels like there's a lot of services that go back to Liberty. It's just being very blunt. If you take certain municipalities, you know, Easley and Clemson are the largest two. And we like to remind you that we're in the county because we still pay county taxes. But we probably could do it without you. Not being rude or arrogant about it, but that's just the way it is, right?
I agree.
And they feel like in some degree, they are doing a favor by annexing because they can provide services. You know, we can provide trash pickup. Well, these kids can play for free at our rec facilities now. You can go mountain biking. Do you need a police officer? We got you covered. Best fire service, no offense, best fire service in the county is right there. We took that off your plate. You're good. You're good. We got you there. That's the way they look at it.
Right.
And they don't see the bigger picture.
You see, I'm not talking about the services. I'm talking about.
I know what you're saying. I'm telling you, the thought behind annexation a lot of times, that is the thought behind it. And I think Councilman Seda made a great point. I think it was 2 meetings ago with the city of Easley. They did tweak their zoning ordinance a little bit. And, you know, there are lot sizes and this, that, and the other. It doesn't read the way that it used to read. And it's not the same. They can still build on an eighth of an acre. I think it's GR1. You can still build on an eighth. But for general residential, gotta have a quarter acre, you know, if it's not a neighborhood. So there has been some tweak and change in this, that, and the other. But they look at it as a favor and not as a messing the county over per se. And I do think it is a little different in some of the other municipalities because it does feel that way. But I think that looking at it, they're not all out to get us, but that's where what you're talking about, we've got to all be, and that was the reason I had the conversation with the city council person, is because they need to know where I was coming from so they can see where they were coming from. And Kim has to do that at the administrative level. But I don't think you can stop it. That has been a battle of all times when it comes to stopping annexation. I don't know that you can, and I like what you did with, and that's actually one of the things we talked about one of the first meetings where we were talking about. Every area of the county is different. If you can entice them not to want to, then you will stop annexation at some point.
Yeah.
Or you make it to where if I want those services, I get them. Or if I want to be like Henry and key off my front porch and not have to worry about back porch. So then I can do. It becomes a choice of style of life that you want to live.
Mr. Chairman, so I talked to Mayor Womack, and he said he pays $1.49 a year. I don't, I've never been to his house. I don't know how his house is whatnot, but he's talking about garbage pickup. He's talking about 3 minutes for a cop, 3 minutes for a firefighter, that kind of stuff. You know, he's calling a value proposition. The thing is, Easley and Clemson have that value proposition. Pickens is struggling to do it, but then you get to 6 Mile, you get to Central, you get to some of the other areas, and those are the folks we're asking you to have a relationship with. Yeah, you're right. Easley could do it if they're doing $149. I mean,
I would love to be able to take some of this stuff to second reading. I personally, and this is 12 items here, I personally, to be determined.
I'll make the motion that we include the impact fee with the number to be determined for second reading purposes.
Second.
Discussion.
Will we have that information?
We're close to getting it, but if this is not necessarily saying that we're going to have second reading tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's,
So,
and we're very close.
we're close in having the information we need.
With requested title numbers speak to us that they don't differ from
So my intent for putting it out on second reading is we're not gonna, I'm saying we're not gonna have the number for second reading, but in fact, impact fee is going to be listed in the second reading. It can always come out in the third.
In other words, that it's there.
Right.
For second reading, but we don't, I mean, we can take it out the third if it gets.
If we don't like the number.
And to be clear for what we're going around the table doing right now, when we say for second reading, there will be actual language,
That's right.
like the proposed new language is something that we can
Yes,
vote on.
let's take what we talked about tonight, finalize all of that. And
Fabulous, thank you, all right.
Can you do that on the impact fee without the information?
That's happened in the past. I'll defer to the attorney on this, but a lot of times you'll have an exhibit A to an ordinance or a diagram to an ordinance that won't be finalized. Actually, we did that with one of the,
We've done it several times.
yeah, it happens. So it happens with third readings where that comes in.
You're gonna be required to have a public hearing, but I think you can just do that before the third reading.
So still give people a chance to talk about
Any other discussion on impact fee? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed?
I guess my question is, I don't know where we all are on the open space subdivision within the zone. Do we make a motion on the proposed mapping based on what you have? Is that what we?
I'll make a motion that on the open space subdivision with the proposed mapping as presented.
Can,
I kind of look closer at the maps myself before we go look.
Go back to the,
No, I mean,
I mean, I know, but I wanted to see, I'll try to remember.
You want the grid or the map?
Not the, oh, he, not the map.
You want the grid with the different?
I wanted the,
with the
what were the
areas?
percentages open space on each one?
He wants the grid
made a motion.
of the 5 different
We need
areas.
to get you where you can do 2 screens at once.
That one.
well, we're gonna.
It didn't get a second.
So, I don't know where the consensus is on.
I'll second it.
Oh, I've got a second, thank you.
I don't know where the
The motion
consensus
is
is on
about
this.
that
Open space.
for second read, for second reading.
with open space subdivision.
Yes. Yeah, for open space subdivision.
We're doing discussion now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
I would, to your point, I would like to look at it more closely too, but by putting it in the second reading, that means we can make the map public, right? And share it.
We'll have to.
Right, yes, so that's why, yeah, I support that because I want people looking at it.
Yeah, it's not done.
My comment there is, there's about 7 more columns. You know, there should be a column on there that says that, this is, like you were talking about, public sewer, and then that there'll be a provisional thing there that says this will be up to DHEC if there's no public sewer, right? So it's not a minimum size, it could be many other sizes.
Well, there's always a default to DHEC and there's always a default to building codes. So, I mean, maybe those are 2 sentences that go like,
Yeah, so maybe it's just 1 column.
yeah.
But, like he said, so then there's no, it's not us, it's you, you gotta go to the,
Right.
make sure it works.
I'll amend my motion to add, that column and that line.
Fair enough.
Do you second that?
Second.
Column was the sewer.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can we restate that motion?
So my expectation would be that, if there's an addendum to it, like he was talking about, an exception where you would end up either having to split it, you just put on there, right? This is our minimum for the county level based on availability of public sewer. If there is no public sewer, you're gonna, your lot size will be dictated by the size needed to perk.
Or topography, or lots of other factors. But
Right.
so why don't you make it broader and say subject to specific limitations of the property?
Fair enough.
That's the language I
I think that's what.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's ideal, right?
so basically you're just saying, this is where this is where we start. We're making the motion to put this out for second reading so people can look at it. We can still go back and change, hey, I don't want 40%, I want 42%, I don't know, whatever it is for agricultural. We can still make those changes, but this is the direction that we're going. That's what we're putting out. Am I correct on that?
That's my thought.
And it's elegant
And
and
just the
simple.
idea that we're looking at making 5 zones out of it.
Right.
Areas. They specifically call them areas.
So basically what you, is on the table is that you're gonna have 5 zones based on this matrix. And then what you're going to do is have the densities based on that table there.
With the caveat,
You're not, I mean, it's not that you're having the density based on the table, that's within those areas. Those areas define the map. And within those areas, here's where we're gonna start. So if you're gonna do, first of all, conventional subdivision, is.
these are all open space.
These are all open space subdivisions.
Yeah, these are all open space subdivisions, and it's 50% 2 acres, 40% 1 acre. But we're gonna talk about that. This is. He's covered that, right? Didn't he? Didn't.
Specific limitations of the property.
So I'll amend my original motion to ensure that it's clear that we're including setbacks. Will you second that?
Second.
That keeps me from amending the motion. Haven't had 2 votes.
Okay.
So we're on.
So that gives us a place to start and tweak.
Alex, does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. My general feeling is, I just think it has too much complication. I couldn't, it's very close to what I said. You have a north and south section. Then you have, what I do like about it is around the cities, you may have another zone. But I would stick with my regular, north-south, cities may be a little bit more denser, so you don't have the automatic annexation. But, to sit down and ultimately explain to somebody why you're in this, this area here, where that map is, based on this matrix, I can't explain.
It's not based on that matrix, it's based on that.
No, it is based on that.
Actually,
The map.
Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
Keep in mind, and this may be what you were about to say, but keep in mind, you're not gonna be sitting down and explaining this to my sister and your daughter or whatever. It's not gonna be a one-off situation. You're gonna be explaining this to a commercial developer that does this for a living. This is not going to freak them out. There's gonna be a financial calculation after that.
No, okay, so
But
when
you're not
somebody,
talking about-
so when somebody has an individual house,
So you're gonna
Yeah.
depend
they're
on.
not regulated at all?
Not by this is for just subdivision.
This is with personal property.
Okay, so when somebody's up on Highway 11, has the same density, you have the same density as somebody down in Beechwood for one house?
It's gonna own the property if it meets the other
See, that's,
existing
see, I
setbacks.
would oppose.
But we're specifically, the motion on the table is specifically.
Okay, I'm just explaining why I'm not voting. Because I don't want to get started
So
down a
before you
road
say we're
on
not
something.
gonna vote, I wanna explain that the motion on the table is specifically to, open space subdivisions, which is subdivisions greater than 10 homes. You don't have to vote for it, that is your right and prerogative. But the motion on the table addresses subdivisions greater than 10 homes that affect where me and my brother can build our houses and how. I don't want that, because that's gonna get it all sidetracked. So I wanna be very clear. That's what.
Want in our ordinance, so it doesn't put us in a no man's land when it comes to RVs. The conversation I think was going on, if it's got that manufactured plate on it, we're done. We just need to be able to permit it. We don't, right now it just exists outside of any permit.
So it kind of follows the, yeah.
I moved to update the UDSO with RVs as a dwelling unit for second reading.
I'll second that. Discussion.
I think we need to focus on subdivisions first, get this out of the way.
I feel like staff, we have these and people are living in substandard ones and problems are happening. So this gives a little bit of teeth for us to start regulating some problem areas. I think it's one of the things that they came to us very early is wanting to fix the UDSO, as I recall.
So correct me if I'm wrong, in other words, it's an RV, if it's got wheels on it,
It's an RV if it's got wheels on it.
and it doesn't fall within it being a dwelling unit.
That's right.
It can move around, you're gonna move it around.
Move it around.
However, if you're living in an RV
Right now, we can't.
and you lock it down to the ground, you can go, okay, now we're gonna title this and it's actually a home.
This RV has got the standard.
In Pickens County, or is that an interesting commercial venture and we don't want to shut down that business?
How many acres is Miles Creek's camping space? Come on, you should know what I'm talking about.
That is pretty significant.
So here's my deal. I have no problem with that. But anything that we own, that we're making money off of renting RV spaces, it should be at least that.
Right, yeah, 12 miles in there too. I don't, right?
Well, not
12 miles.
No RVs on there, okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
So
do.
that should be the cap. Could you make that the motion that that's the largest? one?
Nothing can be larger than my,
Add
okay.
a magnet to it.
Well, maybe we don't need a max. I'm just trying to think of
They're going to naturally
the type
max
of people.
themselves.
So for the,
Yeah, I mean, maybe business capitalism restricts this. No one's gonna build a huge one.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they'll, I apologize, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, shouldn't it fall within the not zone areas? I mean, should we define that where it should go, or instead of making it a blanket thing across the county?
Well, that would go into Henry's earlier comment about now we have zones, we could potentially have one where there's no RV parks in certain zones. We can do that later.
that's true.
When you go out of Clemson and there's a Waffle House right there before you can turn to Pendleton High School.
Yeah.
There's an RV park right behind there that's been packed for 4 or 5 years, and nobody's hiking anywhere. That's just in the middle of nowhere.
And garbage goes to the law.
Yeah, but it's
Anywhere.
so. I mean, yeah. What are they doing for fun? They're watching TV and they're going to work. I guess. Whatever. But it's not an RV park like I would want to limit or say you couldn't do that or want to do that or whatever. And in that particular space, it fits. It doesn't. It's right beside a manufacturing plant. But if you're talking about putting that right there across the street from the new roadside park on Highway 11, I think that it'd be just an absolute aberration.
Right.
Right. So to me, finding some way to kind of scale them at a cap relative to the zone that it's in. You know, if you're wanting to live right outside the city and you're doing that because there's a proximity to something that's whatever, then I think that would work, higher density. But, to have 500 acres, right off of Highway 11, that might be something that's outside of what we were hoping to accomplish here. So they can take a shot at that.
Okay, what if we ask staff? Are there nearby counties or areas where you put a max on?
And it's still 4 per acre? That's not gonna change? See, what I would have done is kind of what Chris was saying. I don't think I would look at this, because this is like a separate thing. I would I look at some of these things and I would want to change some of these parts, not just go in and just get this one thing done, because we want to get it done. But this is something I would just do, as a whole. I mean, you don't have to, it's not a subdivision.
It's not, but when we started this process, it was everything that we see from a staff level in the UDSO that needs to be updated.
There's other things that would change.
It's development, right? And then
If there's other things you want to change, Alex, I would say if we've asked staff to go back and change a couple of things, go ahead and tell them. Like, if we're working on it, let's address all.
Yeah, I just wouldn't do it piecemeal. I would just sit down and say, since it doesn't relate to subdivisions and density, it's not even on the same plane as that. It's almost like common driveways, where we just kind of push it.
Well, we're doing some of those now. We're doing parking lots. We're doing, so.
And to repeat what Mr. Roper started tonight with, these are the things that there's some commonality, that there has been some agreement amongst council. There are countless other things that's not on this list because we never landed to any kind of consensus at all. There weren't votes to do anything with. That's the reason for this list of items, is there seemed to be some commonality among these items.
look at the Highway 11 thing that we did. I mean, 2/3 of the, 1/3 of the conversation was about RV parks up there.
Right.
I mean, there was some significant sensitivities to that, right? So.
Are they?
And the
Can
spirit,
they be up there?
the spirit behind
That's a good question.
doing what we're trying to accomplish at this very moment is to get something out there, to get something on paper, because there's still other things that have to be tackled.
That's what I was saying, whatever is the most important to this timeline of this moratorium, that's what we need to be talking about.
Okay,
Well,
let's
and
move.
that's the reason why, that if we're not interested in making it 5 acre minimum on RV parks, then let's just scrap it, leave it at 2, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
let's
I
make sure
like the idea.
let's make sure we come back. If we're gonna table it for now, then let's make sure we come back to it quickly.
I don't wanna come back to it at all, if we can come to an agreement on 5 acres.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm fine with
Well,
it.
if we can't, then we'll come back and talk about 5 acres later.
I moved that RV parks be a minimum
That
of 5
motion was already
acres.
made, wasn't
No.
I'll second that.
Oh, awesome.
I like the idea that we establish a bare minimum.
Yeah.
And then, like you said,
we can go back and
couple
address the minutia of it later.
Yeah.
At least this gets it moving forward.
That RV parks be moved to a minimum of 5 acres.
But I would like to go back and look at specifics within the zones Do we want to limit in places?
Is there a
But not as a
minimum
part
in
of
that? Two acre. Just trying to find it. Do you know where it's at?
Any other discussion on that?
I would like to, while we're looking at it, because we have a moratorium in place now, I would like to propose a motion to amend that to cap it at 10 acres in the 3 heritage areas until, we can look at it in the future. That way we don't end up with a 75 acre
In
place house.
between.
I'll second that.
Is it, where'd you get that number?
I just made it
Out
up.
of his head.
Randomly.
The problem with that is we're also trying to make sure we don't have lots of small ones all over the place.
Part of the
10
open
feels real
space,
small.
So that's what he's saying.
The 5
Using that
different
same
zones.
That's 40 RV homes, right, because it's 4 acre?
I'll be open,
Yes, but it's only 180 days because it's an RV park.
I don't see.
I'm just wondering if 10's the right, like, I get the intent, I'm just wondering if 10's the right number.
Where is it?
I would like to limit it so that we don't end up.
So, point of order, whatever, the map that you're referring to is part of the open space subdivision plan.
Right.
And that's all that is part of. So,
That's a zone.
No, we're
Just
voting
open
on
space
map
subdivision,
zones, aren't
right?
We already did that, didn't we vote on that the very
No,
first
we
time?
didn't.
okay, guys, hey, we have way too many
So what
conversations
happens
going.
when somebody comes in?
So, as far as the 5 area map, that was voted on as part of the open space subdivision, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, it's tied to those areas.
So we'll have to have a second motion, a separate motion to designate that map as our development
That's where I was
areas.
going.
About development areas.
Okay.
So that'll need to be a separate motion.
Yeah.
On top.
But on the moment, we're talking about RV parks in general, 5 to 10 acres. No more than 10 acres in the top 3 or heritage zones, I think is what you said, right?
Right.
That's what the discussion is at the moment.
That's right.
So, do you wanna make?
Hey, you can't add to that. I mean,
Sure you can.
okay, well,
Okay, I'm amending my motion. Subject to the approval of the zone areas, I would like
okay.
to limit RV parks to a minimum of 5 acres and a maximum of 10 acres.
You can do
That's it.
Okay.
And just to be clear, no limit on the other 2 areas.
Right.
Well, do you still want the minimum of 5?
Minimum of 5.
No.
No max.
Second,
It was already seconded.
I second it.
okay. Discussion on that.
My thought would be that it'd be implied here that over the next period of time, that we come back and we do a little bit deeper dive to maybe expand that if it's necessary.
Any other discussion on that?
So just say it to me one more time with the motion. Minimum 5 acres for the first 3.
Hang on, let her tell me what I said. She's ready to do.
Minimum of 5 for all of them.
Yes, it's the motion is an RV park with a minimum of 5 acres in all the zones and a maximum of 10 acres in the heritage zones, I think it was.
Pending the approval of the map. Or subject
Pending
to
approval, that's right.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the development area map and apply that to, as a guideline for all of the discussions that we're going to have about locations of development activities.
With the names that they have designated.
And significantly improved colors.
All right.
Second.
I have a second. Discussion on that.
Happily.
But we can modify it.
Mhm.
Or not do it at all later.
Of course.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the parking lots, have to be pervious with material approved by stormwater.
You want to include that excess of 110% or not?
I was just summarizing that, sorry, yes, all of that.
I'll second that. Discussion?
Do we have any literature on this?
It should have been presented to you.
Yes, you have seen it before, I do not.
We didn't talk about it in the last couple of meetings. The
It's
idea
been a
is
long time.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's in this,
Would
Okay, that's
the
fine.
pervious area be counted as open space? Would the pervious area be counted as open space? 'Cause, I mean,
So the surface of the whole parking lot is pervious. That's the material it's made of.
well, no, it's the excess of 110% of the minimum requirement. So you have a parking lot that's asphalt, that's impervious.
It'll be the
And then
minimum size.
outside of that
Oh.
will be the pervious area.
Okay.
And I know that,
Typically, yes.
so that would typically be counted as open space. Okay, that's, because I know that was a big point to some stakeholders.
If you used a material to park on that was pervious, it couldn't be counted as your open space.
Well, they wanted it counted as open space,
So,
as long as the water flows through the ground.
so here's my question on that. If they make the entire parking space, pervious, permeable,
That actually
whatever,
was their point.
could that be included in the open space?
I'm gonna say that, I don't know.
That was what they wanted.
I think
So for
this-
instance, you have a pool, but I mean, you need to deal with it, because I promise you, it'll come up, come up to me. You have a pool house and a soccer field and a parking lot in between that's pervious, they want that included in the open space, even though the pool house.
I don't think the intent of the open space is that.
Right.
If you get to a gravel, something that the water runs through and you can get your shoes dirty, then maybe that's a different conversation.
And they actually have, I learned this in this process, they actually have pervious concrete.
Well, that's where I was
Yeah.
going.
There's lots of
Which is
pervious
interesting.
materials.
The-
That's what I thought we were requiring. You're just saying it has to be pervious around.
Let's walk it through. I'm having a hard time with the pervious. So, having lived in a place that had significant parking space that was with this design, it is okay, not the pervious concrete, but just generally speaking, it is it's a warmer, atmosphere, more organic, grass generally, that kind of thing. Is there not room to consider letting that count towards the open space?
I do think so.
Because I mean, it's gonna take, to give them the incentive to spend the extra money to not have a bunch of blacktop. And the relative heat and the,
Balancing that incentive though with the purpose of open space was to have community areas and to not be cutting down trees and to keep things lovely, and now you're saying, but your parking lot's okay.
I thought there was some kind of a canopy requirement or something like that we
That's
talked
the
about.
other piece, yeah, and I apologize for not having it in front of me, but there is also a tree canopy in
Right.
that parking lot ordinance.
In the parking lot ordinance.
So if they're already doing that, I mean, the square gridded sort of concrete
Yeah, right.
spaces, I mean, they're so welcoming, right? And it would make them, instead of just parking, in the summertime, you've got an open kind of area there where you can use for multi-use. So you turn your parking lot into an asset versus just, black concrete.
Do we have to decide this tonight?
That parking is.
It's a second anyway, right? I mean, it's
Planning commission.
second reading.
No, I mean, we can decide on parking lots, but we don't have to decide whether or not a parking lot
Right.
counts as open space. Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
Let's punt that.
Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? All right, I'll make a motion that we fix our general grammatical and title updates.
Okay.
I'm gonna give that to Councilman Ball. Discussion.
I was wanting to hear someone argue against doing that.
Hearing none,
It looks good to me.
all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Tiny home development,
I'm not sure on this, only because of the, do you want it to exist everywhere? I think we need to pick up.
I don't necessarily think it needs to be linked to the land use map, because I do think they're different. And the way that they work with density, if you have 25 and they're on shared sewage and they have a big park, that might be okay in an area that otherwise doesn't allow that much density, because it's still just gonna have one road in, and I think they can be developed in such a way that, having tiny homes next to each other does not feel as dense as having single family homes next to each other. So having the same acreage requirements doesn't seem to apply. You don't have as many people on it, they don't have as many cars, they feel different. So because they feel different to me, I would want this to be a separate from our maps. We could talk out of that, that's where
The only thing I'm struggling with is when I go to the extremes that these developers will do. And I'm gonna build 500 tiny homes.
But 500 tiny homes is maybe 500 cars or maybe 1,000. Like, you have fewer cars for each home, you have fewer people driving in and out, you have,
Yeah, you
like-
do.
like in terms of the way it impacts, you have fewer kids going to school, like in terms of how much it impacts the neighborhood and the area, it's not as much as single-family homes. So to make them keep the same.
It's gonna be more of a retirement community because folks aren't gonna drive more than 30 minutes. You know, that, I still think that's too big for that area up there because that's not what we were hoping to do before. If you have 500 of them, they should probably be clustered more towards, cities, right? Where you're gonna want like individual home ownership or whatnot, but the density is okay. The 500 is just not, it feels to me that we wouldn't want to put a mobile home we talked about off of Highway 11 with 500 houses in it. Mobile home park is the rules we talked about applying here.
So to me, the difference is, if we're talking about somebody, there's no standards for tiny homes being built, right? So there's that. I don't want to build a tiny home on my property. Okay, here are the standards you need to meet for that. Versus a subdivision of tiny homes, two different things.
This is tiny home developments, I think we're only talking
Yeah,
about.
but because the concern that we're raising here, and y'all are talking about a real issue, I'm not trying to say that it's not, but the concern we've got is people put tiny homes in there and you can't get an ambulance in, you know, or you can't get a fire truck in, or you got them all stacked together. We need a place that we can say, okay, if you're gonna put those tiny homes there, we need to turn around and it's gonna be this big, this needs to be.
Which would be based on the land use area map, right?
So I do have a serious question. Before we even talk about a tiny home development, do we not need to adopt the standards
What
for
is
a tiny home? Because we don't currently have anything,
We
correct?
treat tiny homes as a principal building, just like the same as a, regular dwelling.
So then how can we call it a tiny home development if you treat it like it's like any other home?
We would have to define it.
Is it's a definition of the amount of square footage, right? You had that definition earlier.
We've seen that, yeah, it was like a maximum of 700 square feet.
400 or 600 square feet, I don't know the number.
But is that written in something that we,
It was in that one.
Each
Yeah.
lot in a tiny home development shall have a minimum
have we
area of
passed that
1,200
though?
square
Have we
feet.
voted on that? That's my point.
Yeah.
Do we need to,
So you're saying we need to put that in and
we
then.
putting the cart before the horse?
So I have a
I think
question.
that's what you were getting
That's
at.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
So-
let's define a tiny home first.
So based on what Chris said, we don't got nothing for tiny houses right now, right?
Right.
And it's complex. Why can't we do the big thing and then come back to the tiny houses?
Good.
So version 2 of this over the year after we establish the overall.
But once the moratorium's done, people could come in and start putting in tiny homes, and right now they're doing it in an unsafe way. So if we at least define them and make them have to be cited, then we gave, and there's open, and these, and the tiny home developments have an open space requirement too, right? It's not like,
Which is, for the purposes of this ordinance, Pickens County considers tiny home to be a self-contained dwelling unit built with any compliant method and materials that is not on wheels, sometimes referred to as an apartment, less than 600 square feet. Tiny homes on wheels would be referred to as RVs.
so you're looking to do what,
Just the,
314D?
you put the definition,
Just the definition without the development standards?
right, for second reading, so that we have that in.
The point she just raised was that's the way the cabins got to Mount Creek Park.
100%.
Yeah.
That is a tiny home development. We have on the point at Turkeywood and Mount Creek Park.
Turkeywood.
We have a tiny home
Clear cut
development.
for it.
We do.
Yes.
Homes, like,
Townhomes is slower, but that's coming.
so this is something that's gonna fall into the massive growth that needs to be addressed.
Very much. We have one development now that did, several single-family homes, and they did townhomes on the other.
And townhomes are really the answer to a lot of attainable and workforce housing. The article I was saying all about Clemson's development for attainable housing, they're working with Pickens County Habitat for Humanity, but what they're doing is townhouses, which Habitat for Humanity can't often do. And they're able to get a lot more homes that way. So I think it's important that we have these, just so I'm looking at the density of a town, and what the proposal here is it cannot exceed 2 units per acre if it's on septic, and 8 units per acre when served by public. And right now, per your answer earlier, that these are subjected to our map.
Yep.
density unless we say,
Correct.
unless we say that they have their own density and can be in any zone.
So now I think, I'll make the motion that it's out, that is written, purely to get it in second reading, and it, like everything else, can be tweaked on the map with density and later dated.
Second.
Discussion.
What is it you're actually voting on?
To update the UDSO to match National Building Code standards in an attempt to provide more direction. And I can't read, my eyes are so dry.
Density dictated by land use area map.
Thank you.
It's supposed to, this is from the August 31st proposal, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
So what you're saying is this thing called 10D, is this what we're voting on?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That is correct. All right, good, thank you.
Discussion. It is currently not addressed, we made that clear, right? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? The traffic study policy, I definitely will make that motion.
Second.
Have a second. Discussion. On adopting that.
Okay, that's gonna be 11. This,
I think we all argued on the same side several meetings ago that it's not enough to do the study, but you gotta do something with the study. That pretty much is what this is saying.
so we're voting on 11.
The traffic study policy.
You're using a different. But it's called traffic study policy.
This one with the.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the table, okay.
Discussion.
So it's just a statement we're adding to the land use application, which is what they use to apply to planning commission, stating that whatever the results are of the traffic study must be implemented at their expense.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And then updates to the stormwater ordinance, and this is listed there. Make the motion that we include that as well. As listed. Have a second by Councilman Wallace.
Didn't we push this to a consultant?
We've got the design standards that are being reviewed by a consultant, but the changing the minimum area and increasing the buffer zones is not, that was not for the consultant.
Okay.
So there's 4 parts, 2 of them are here and 2 of them the consultant will bring back.
Do we need all 4 of them to update the UDSO? So will it be like impact fees where we're getting the last bit of it before the 3rd reading? Or?
Potentially, we could have it before 3rd reading, but not necessarily. However, the design storms and the detention waivers are part of the stormwater design manual, not the ordinance.
Okay. Okay, so
you can update
we can
the
update the
ordinance, and then staff can update the manual once.
based on the consult, okay, great.
They're independent.
They're independent.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Anything else that I may be missing tonight?
The last vote was the 40-page amendment.
Hearing none,
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Mr., I have one thing I want to ask.
Do I have a second on the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, I wouldn't be this early, but there was a motion on the table.
The discussion.
Discussion.
Discussion. When it was the RVs from 5 to 10, that was in the corridor, which corridor was that in?
That's why we didn't link it to the map yet. Right now
No,
it's,
but he did say it was gonna be the corridor. He said
It-
the
it
minimum
was
was in all the corridors.
oh, did that pass with the? Okay.
Yeah, but there's, I don't think there's anything called the heritage corridor.
There was 3 that all had heritage.
Oh, okay, all right.
I didn't.
Appalachian heritage, agricultural heritage, natural heritage.
Any other discussion on the motion to adjourn? Is that answer that? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands.